Welcome to Let's Be Perfectly Queer, a queer podcast creating space to talk about all things queer. My name is Archie, and I am joined today by Ash Perez from Second Try.
Questions of how you identify, seeking answers to clarify. Whether you're queen
or somewhere in between, let's be perfectly queer.
How you doing, Ash?
I'm good. How are you, Archie?
I'm very good. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for getting in touch. Really excited to have you on. And today's episode is Questions for a Trans Guy from a Trans Guy. And you came up with the great title for us.
I love it's one of the secrets of being a writer that I also love, like the marketing side of it and coming up with titles and stuff like that.
As soon as you said it, I was like, I could not come up with a better title. So thank you so much for doing that. You took half the job away from me.
Of course. Now we'll do the other part of it right now and do the interview.
Exactly. So for those who don't know you, did you want to tell us a bit about yourself, Second Try, and New Guy Tries?
Yes, I'll do it in that order. My name is Ash Perez. I am a trans guy living out in Los Angeles. I am a writer, an author, and most recently I have a series on Second Try, which is the platform that the Try Guys made after they left Buzzfeed. A lot of New Guy Tries is actually also available on YouTube as well, because it was important for us to make it available to the trans community. But if you would like to explicitly support the series, you can go to secondtry.tv and sign up there. And we have 2 seasons of our show, New Guy Tries, which is all about me exploring my journey into becoming a man.
Yeah, and we got to watch that, and I got to say, it was amazing to watch your journey. I could relate to a lot of the things you were saying on the show as well. And it was really interesting to see someone like yourself be so open about it. I thought that was great.
Oh, thank you.
On New Guy Tries, you've shared parts of your journey across 2 seasons so far, one focusing on manhood and the other on boyhood. So what inspired you to explore both of those themes?
So the first one about manhood, the first season, which was about manhood, was kind of just a default. Like, I didn't know if there was going to be another season. And it was really the biggest question on my mind. What does it mean to be a man? How can I become a man and do it without the biggest male role model in my life? Because my dad passed away before I transitioned. So did my grandfather, both my grandfathers. And I have 6 aunts and no blood uncles.
Wow.
So it was very much like a very female dominated side of my house, of my family. And so I really didn't know where to start asking just the questions about manhood of like, should I shave when I'm getting a little bit of those like tiny gross hairs? At what point should I get a suit? What color suit? You know, the kinds of things that I think people maybe take for granted, especially cis guys, about just going into that step of manhood, or that tend to happen for most guys at puberty, which is, you know, around 14 to 16. But for me, it was happening when I was 32, 33. And so I didn't really know where to go. And it just so happened that I was part of a group that's all about trying things that is made up of guys. So it felt like the perfect way to kind of honestly make my re-entrance onto the internet and into this gender.
Yeah, that's awesome. And manhood and boyhood, why did you decide that the second season was going to be boyhood?
Yes, so first season was manhood by default. Second season was boyhood, when we were just kind of like throwing around ideas, me and my producer, Nick, about what is it that we want to say? What is it we want to do? And we kind of kept landing. We just kind of went over ideas of things that I wanted to do. And one of them was forging, metal forging. I had watched this show, Forged in Fire, and I was like, this is cool. Like, I did find that post-testosterone, a lot of my interests changed more than I thought they would. Like, things that I would never be interested in before, just like sports or metal forging, even F1, I was kind of like more interested in, and I don't know what that is. Maybe just social allowance for that. So we kind of pulled up a bunch of things that I would be interested in doing, and we realized, like, Nick was like, oh, it's kind of all the classic, like, boys' toys, you know? So it was swords and guns and, why am I blanking on
the cars, the trucks?
Yes, cars. You got it. Trucks was the only one that I wasn't naturally inclined to do. But it was about like my sibling was assigned male at birth and had a fascination with trucks that I never understood. So it felt like another place to explore, which is why I couldn't remember it. But yeah, it kind of just came about naturally. And it honestly felt like the natural continuation of after kind of learning to define my manhood, then being like, oh, but there's such a big chunk that I didn't get to experience, which is boyhood. And I think for a lot of queer and trans people, they say that we have a second adolescence when we come out. And I have so felt that first coming out as bisexual and then coming out as trans. And it was really cool to actually get to experience moments in that second adolescence.
Yeah, and watching you from the first season to the second season, you seemed a lot more free and comfortable in your skin as well, which was really nice to see.
Yeah.
You could really see that almost there was like a weight lifted off your shoulders in the second season, and you were almost given permission to be fun and have that boyhood. That's what it looked like for me on the outside. Did that feel like that at all, that you had that permission to have a second childhood?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, I love your comments and observations as another trans man, because it's like you so specifically understand what I was going through.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't realize how much the first season affected me until we got around to making the second season. Right before the first season, I went to my first, or it might have been after, I can't remember. I went to a all trans male camp, like a summer camp called Camp Lost Boys, that's about like reclaiming your youth. And then at the same time, I was a camp counselor at a camp that was split gender for a grief camp for boys who had experienced loss of a parent or a sibling or a caretaker. And I was really afraid of not knowing how to interact with them because I had never been a boy their age. And in fact, boys that age terrified me. And I think that combined, those two experiences combined with doing New Guy Tries, I call it my summer of boyhood or my summer of manhood. It really was just like thrusting me into examining all these different parts of it. And I think by the end of the first season, I just realized, oh, like even cis men don't really have a handle or understand their manhood in the way that I thought they would. And it kind of gave me license to just be me again instead of trying to learn and jot down what it means to be a man, because I learned it can mean so many things to so many people.
It's very true. Everybody has a different opinion on what it is to be a man. So there's no like blueprint, even though it looks like everybody has it together. Everybody's, putting the pieces together. And I thought that was really good about the first season, is that you were able to share everybody's opinion on what it is to be a man. And everybody had a different take, which I thought was really refreshing. And also in that first season, you raised some good questions about manhood itself. And has your idea of manhood evolved at all? It kind of sounds like it has, but has it evolved since the first season?
Oh yeah, almost entirely. I mean, I think it's so funny, and in some ways I know that being trans isn't a choice, because I don't know if I would have ever chosen to do this. Not just because of the societal pressure, but because I had become so comfortable in not femininity, but in feminism and in sisterhood. And I had found the lane of being a woman that actually I felt very comfortable in. And I felt so foreign and ostracized from masculinity and from maleness, and honestly, like, frankly, very terrified of it. And so I came in with, I would say, a very myopic, limited idea of what manhood is, and just a lot of fear. And doing this really evolved just my whole perspective on what manhood means, and also what cis men need in order to explore their manhood. Like, it wasn't just, the whole thing kind of became a Trojan horse for cis guys to be able to talk about the thing that nobody asks them about, which is what it means to be a man. And it's such a complicated question for them in this world that has so much variety for female presentation, but very, very little variety for male presentation.
I didn't actually think about that, but it's so true that men are supposed to fit in this little box where women have different variations that they're allowed to take on, which is quite interesting. And I'd never actually thought about it.
Yeah.
It is quite hard sometimes transitioning. It is definitely hard. And I understand if I could have been born a male, be a lot cheaper, a lot less mental health strain, everything, you know. And especially in those first few months, it's kind of like, am I passing? You've got all this stuff going on. You know, are they going to accept me for me?
Yeah.
So you transitioning in the public eye, that can't be easy. Did being part of a successful YouTube show and Buzzfeed show, did that influence your transition timeline? Because I was kind of interested. Did that impact your timeline because of the show or any contractual stuff that you had involved?
You know, it really wasn't anything to do with BuzzFeed. I left BuzzFeed in 2018, and I actually came out as bisexual in my show, Unfortunately, Ashley, which I did at BuzzFeed, or You Do You, actually, before Unfortunately, Ashley. And I actually felt a lot of freedom to bring like my whole self to what we were doing at BuzzFeed. Maybe a little too much, honestly, but it was more just a personal journey. I don't think it would have been an issue with BuzzFeed. It was honestly the kind of thing that was the impetus for my transition was my dad dying. I don't think I realized how attached to being daddy's girl I was and how much I didn't want to disappoint my dad, who ironically I think would have been very accepting of me. I have a trans sibling and who's non-binary, and my dad was accepting of them. But I think I don't know, that daddy's girl thing had like a hold on me. So yeah, I don't think it necessarily affected that timeline, but I think like a lot of trans people that I'm meeting now, people who transitioned in the last 5 years, kind of did it over the pandemic, where there was this time where for once in our society, like you couldn't go outside and didn't have to go outside, and I think I was really intimidated by the idea of changing in front of people so publicly, and I kind of got to do it at home by myself and then present my new self as I knew myself to the world.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate to the not wanting to transition while you have such a close-knit relationship with your parents or disappointing them. And it got to the point where I felt like, you know, I can just keep living unauthentically until my parents pass away. And then I was like, but I could be 40, 50. Why am I doing that to myself and not allowing myself to live authentically? And so I can relate to that part. But it's got to be hard having that parental figure that you've lost and not seeing this authentic side of you. Do you ever feel grief in that, of your dad not being able to see this side of you?
Yeah, I really do. I think my dad and I, in some ways, could have bonded on it. We were already really close, but I think we could have bonded on a whole new level. Like, I really grieve things like, oh, I feel like my dad would have gotten back in shape with me and like wanted to like go lift weights, which is so funny because the whole trope of masculinity is like, do you even lift, bro? But like, you know, I was on this push. My dad had some heart issues to like get him healthy, and I found it very hard as a daughter. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if we could have just like worked out together, and that would have been fun. One thing that's interesting though is transitioning. I find myself looking more and more like my dad every day, and so that's a mind fuck of just like, I miss him, and then here he is, you know, like reflected back in me. So there's a lot of grief that comes with it. And the first season of New Guy Tries ended up being a lot more of a reflection of grief than I thought it would be. It was kind of half my journey into manhood and half an exploration of what it meant to lose my dad. And I honestly think grief is part of every queer person's story, because whether it's your grief or your family's grief, people are grieving the person you were or the person they thought you would become. There's a lot to that, and it's a complicated feeling that we all have to kind of learn to deal with as part of our stories.
Yeah, very true. And I found it interesting as well in one segment when you're talking about women and you use the word we. I don't personally feel comfortable associating that kind of we as women now as a trans man.
Yeah.
But does that still feel true for you today? Can you still feel the we in the women?
Yeah, that was really interesting when you had kind of sent me some potential questions that we might be asking. And I was like, oh, I didn't even really clock that in myself. And yeah, in terms of using the we, I don't know if that has to come with, honestly, me being like a sorority girl, where that like female, literally sorority, the idea of being family to women is like imparted in me. It was so much a part of my identity. I think more what it is that I relate so much to the female struggle. When I think of we women, I'm really speaking, especially in that instance, I was speaking about like the way that women are socialized. And I was socialized as a woman. So like in that instance, I relate as a we. The interesting thing is as more and more time has gone, that season was only maybe a year and a half into my transition, possibly a little bit more, but like pretty early into my transition. And the further along I get into my transition, the more I don't know if I belong in fully female spaces because, the privilege of testosterone and being a trans guy is that it's a pretty strong hormone. And so, even though in the beginning you might not be passing, you really do start to later. And I don't know. And I don't know if that's just the physicality or if I just came into my sense of self with my being comfortable with my own masculinity that was like, oh, I don't need to be in these all female spaces that quite frankly felt safer to me before.
Yeah, and I can relate to it in that sense as well because that's the world you knew.
Yeah.
You're in all female spaces, and then as you start to pass more, and I think for me as well, it's probably about the third year of transitioning was very comfortable in my masculinity and in my presentation of this is how I want to present as myself as a trans man, that you don't feel like you need to hold on to these spaces that you once kept as safety.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It very much is kind of like in the beginning, oh, I don't feel safe. I have no idea what space I'm going to hold as a man. And it's very much like, oh, as a trans man trying to be a man, it felt like a lot of imposter syndrome. And then as the years go on, it's like, oh, trans man, like now I'm just occupying space as myself. But as I have more safety and honestly, more acquaintance with all the different types of masculinity, I know that there's a space for me there. And so I don't have to go to a space that I know how to occupy of just women or even queer people, because I've found recently in my journey that it's especially important not even just to be around queer people, because all of my queer friends, I love them, but tend to be like lesbians, who I was part of that group before. And even still, like, there's a different affinity of like, I need trans male friends to talk about the specific struggles that trans men go through,
Oh, yeah, 100% get that. And sometimes, like, I love the queer spaces, but sometimes being in queer spaces as a trans man who is dating a woman who looks like you're in a heterosexual relationship, It can feel like you're in the wrong place.
That is a mind fuck. I think even more than like being a bi woman who's in like, even if I was the bi woman in relationship with a man, whether cis or trans, there's kind of more of a cultural understanding of like, oh, you're a woman, so you understand what it means to be discounted, and B, like, yes, of course, you're still part of this community. It's not that people don't accept trans people. Well, most queer people don't accept trans people as part of the community, but it is just like, oh yeah, on the face, you look like a heterosexual cisgender man, which is crazy. I think that's been more of an identity fuck than anything else that I've gone through.
You weren't expecting that?
No, I was like, and now I really don't, as a writer, like projects like this that are explicitly about me being trans, it's very easy to see who I am and what my identity is and to understand all the backstory that comes with that. I recently have been recording and am going to release in the next year a rom-com that I wrote that was about two women. And I've been in the sessions and people are like, oh, this is the author. And I can see for the first second that they're like, why is a straight man writing this like lesbian? This is weird. And it's like, oh my God, no, it's me. It really feels like such a mind fuck.
Yeah, it's crazy. Before I started transitioning, it wasn't anything that was on my mind. I had a lot of other things, what I needed to focus on, but that was one thing that I was not prepared for sure.
Yeah, it's the double-edged sword, and it's nice. I mean, like, there's the downside to the gender affirmation of like, one thing I realized after the fires were going on down here, there was a lot of volunteering. So I went and volunteered at this place where we were like helping prep food for people. And I kept having to lift things because they were like, can we get all the men over here? And I was like, I don't want to lift stuff. I just want to like chat with people and sort clothes. They kept being like, oh, you strong man, come here. And I was like, oh God.
Hey, at least they think you're a strong man. That's a compliment.
That's what I'm saying. It's gender affirming and also like, oh, bummer.
In the second season, it was wonderful, like I mentioned at the start, watching you have fun and rediscover and just be like a free young boy who's just enjoying life. And do you ever feel sad that you didn't experience that as a young child?
Yes and no. Like, of course, I feel sad that I didn't get to experience my boyhood in real time. There's a lot of things. There's so many parts of my personality that I wonder what would have been if I had just been allowed to be myself from the beginning. But at the same time, I have so much empathy for so many different kinds of people because I have a lived experience of knowing what it feels like to not be understood. Which is, what the core of empathy is. And so, and there were very much great moments of my girlhood that I enjoyed, like the fucking Spice Girls. I would never trade that. To be 7 years old and have girl power take over the world and to be a girl was amazing. And I honestly just wish that there had been more flexibility, that like little girls could have behaved however they wanted. And I think that's kind of what's happening now. Like there is more, I see, at least in Los Angeles, little boys who are in their dress phase and they're wearing princess dresses and they're out and like, and maybe it's a phase, maybe it's not. And like parents just don't really care because they're just playing. So I think that freedom would have allowed me to be myself earlier, where it was very much like, well, girls don't do that kind of stuff. Girls don't roughhouse. Girls don't get dirty in that way. So I felt limited by that.
I can totally relate as a twin as well, who I was not feminine at all growing up. And she was, loved the Barbie dolls. And I just wanted the action figures and the trucks and that kind of stuff. It was very hard because I felt torn from such a young age. It's like, why don't I want to play with the Barbie dolls? Why do I want the trucks and the Transformers? And so it is quite interesting when you look back and things like my dad was running around the house without a shirt on. So as a 5-year-old, I thought I could do the same thing. But you don't realize about gender. As a kid, you don't. You're just having fun and exploring. And it's society and our parents who force the gender roles onto us. So it's quite interesting when, as a trans man, looking back and like, what could my journey been like had I been given the freedom to just explore?
Yes. And the shirt thing is so exactly the perfect example of that, because I remember exactly the age where it became socially inappropriate for me to not have my shirt anymore. And it was probably around like 6, because I couldn't be going to like actual like kindergarten or like, primary school not wearing a shirt. And I think kids have a freedom because up until puberty, our bodies are essentially the same. Little kids are like little sticks that like, their voices are the same. There's like not really any shape or reason or rhyme to them. And I was really confused by that, honestly, because everyone kept saying puberty sucked and that everyone hated puberty. So as I felt betrayed by my body, I was just like, this must just be what people are talking about. What I didn't realize until later is that ends at some point for people, that post puberty and with the results actually being what you want, you get to be happy in your gender. For trans people, that never ends. It just kind of gets worse.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I remember when I think I was about 5 or 6, and what hit me was when I was running around the house and we were having visitors over, and my mum was like, "Put a shirt on. We've got visitors over." I'm like, "But Dad's got no shirt on." And then my mum said, "But Dad's a boy and you're not." And that was the first time I'd ever heard, and that was just like, whoosh.
Just messes with you.
Yeah. And then as a 5, 6-year-old, you're like, what do you mean? I thought I was exactly like Dad. I thought we were the same. And then to be told I wasn't was quite confronting as a young kid.
And it's so interesting too, because it's like you have your sister who's a twin, and you should be exactly like your sister, but yet you're different than her too. I'm curious, question for you. A word that really tripped me up, and I don't know if you have the exact same equivalent in Australia or if it's the same, but like the word tomboy really had this space that I knew I wasn't the right type of girl. And then at some point, the phrase tomboy gets thrown out there, with the implication still being that you're heterosexual. And it allowed me to play in this space that actually let me explore a lot more of the gender stuff that I wanted. Like, oh, tomboys don't have to wear dresses. Tomboys don't want to, do the typical girl stuff. They don't like pink. But it was confusing to me, like that also typically goes away at a certain point. And then I was like, oh, am I just a lesbian? And then I did that, and that still wasn't right. So I just kept going until I found the stop.
Yeah, we had tomboy, and I was called a tomboy through the middle school years. So
Yeah.
probably from, year 3 to year 6 ish. And then once you go through puberty and you go into high school era, then that label goes away and they're like, oh, that's the weird kid who might be a lesbian.
Yes,
That's the way it
that,
kind of.
yes.
And then you find out everybody's been talking behind your back saying you're a lesbian and you don't
Yeah.
even know what a lesbian is. So,
Yeah.
you're just trying to live life. But yeah, I do feel like the tomboy definitely gave me the label to be able to do the boyish stuff like wrestle and karate and soccer
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
all those kind of things that many of the boys in town did. So it was quite interesting that, those labels, they're not really around as much anymore because we have more labels to understand what's going on with kids these days, that we don't need this tomboy label kind of like, we're going to put this person in a box and we're not going to label them. We're just going to say they're a tomboy because they might be
Yeah.
queer and we don't want to put that actual label on them.
Yeah.
Or they could just like some boyish stuff and that's okay. So it's quite interesting because language does evolve and, even the language around trans people has evolved. And I think it's going to continue to evolve as well.
Exactly. And you know what I'm realizing now? Like, it should have been it was an Easter egg, tomboy. It was in the phrase, like, and the amount of people that I know that were tomboys that are now trans men, it's pretty big overlap.
I've seen the same thing as well. And I've seen as well in the lesbian community, a lot of the masculine or the butch, in quotation marks, style of label of lesbians have actually transitioned as well. So it's quite interesting to see that there is you gravitate towards those kind of masculine features because, hey, actually, everything doesn't align and we just need it all to align and make sense.
Exactly. There's that continuum. And then what I think is so cool is like when people are allowed to land where they want, it's like, oh yeah, for me, I want it because I was dressing more butch and my friends were like, well, why isn't that enough? Like you already wear what you want. You could cut your hair. Who cares? And it's like, well, I don't want to be a masculine woman and I want to be a feminine boy. And there absolutely are masked women who just want to be masked women, like it doesn't, even though people land on the continuum, it doesn't erase that some people genuinely feel right in that. And I think so much of the disservice is that, we're just beginning to really have and understand the conversation of the difference between gender and sexuality. They were so tied up together that we didn't really know what that meant,
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how it changes and evolves as well because even in the last 10 years, I've had a lot of my friends who even like are super masculine. It's like, hey, actually, I'm non-binary, which I think is amazing, because they're not allowing society to put a label on them anymore. They're allowing who they are inside to come out, which I think is absolutely beautiful. And, some people it takes a little bit longer depending on the backgrounds of your family support and that kind of thing, And what you were saying before was resonating with you. You have short hair, you're masculine, isn't that enough? I had that conversation with my mum, but mum, this is not who I am.
Yeah, I'm still not a boy.
I was like, do you want me to be around or do you want me to be the presentation that you want me to be? And so then we had those kind of conversations, which is hard to have with your mum.
Yeah.
But then she's been an amazing support. She was here to look after me when I had my top surgery, though she was kind of annoying because, mums and pandering. But it's great that, my family have been so super supportive in the whole thing. And, not everybody has that, but you have a trans sister.
Yeah.
As soon as you said that, I was like, that's so fascinating.
I think what was so interesting, and the more and more trans people I meet, there's actually quite a few who have trans siblings too. Yeah, my sibling came out, I don't know, I came out first as bisexual, and that was a big deal, and it was really hard for my family. And then by the time 5 years later, my sibling came out as trans, my parents were on the love is love train and very pro pride and all of that. And I was like, you're fucking welcome, classic older sibling. And the interesting thing is there wasn't that spark yet in me of oh, me too. A lot of people are like, why didn't you come out then? And I think I had felt enough of a change and a shift in my identity coming out as queer where I finally felt like it really was such a big boon to my mental health to have the queer community that I felt okay at that point, Later, as I came out, the funny thing too is because my sibling's non-binary and not binary, I also, when I started coming out, was like, maybe I'm non-binary, and then as I kind of went more into it, I was like, I saw a gender specialist who was like, I'm just asking an open-ended question. You say you identify whatever pronouns. it very much seems to me like your trans mask. Is there a reason that you're not like allowing that in? And I just broke down and started crying, and I realized, oh, it's because I'm afraid to be. It's like that's a step too far, not just to say that, oh, I'm not a woman, I'm kind of both or kind of neither, but to be like, no, I'm a man is a very big jump. And the funny thing is now, like, I just love that gender expression can change every day. Like, I really didn't before. If somebody said she, it really felt very misgendering to me and very made me very dysphoric. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, oh, I can see that somebody is recognizing the femininity in me, and I'm also okay with that because I love my femininity. But as we evolve, it's a very kind of classic queer conundrum, at least in my life, that I've recognized that labels are very, very, very important in the beginning. And I totally respect that for people. But honestly, the more you get to know yourself, it's like, well, people can kind of say what they want, but I know who I am.
Yeah. And as a teacher, sometimes, when I first started my transition and I got misgendered, it was like a knife to the chest. It was like, It hurt, like physical pain. And now when someone does it, and it's just a slip of the tongue or whatever it may be, it doesn't hurt as much. But what I found quite interesting, and I'm not sure if you've noticed the same thing, but kids, teach high school age kids, with an Asian background are more likely to misgender me than kids from a Caucasian background.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially if they're Filipino or any kind of, I don't know if this is other Pacific Island nations, but my mom's been misgendering both of us our whole life. She misgenders my cats because in Tagalog, there are no pronouns. So on the other side of my family, the Cuban side, it was actually very difficult because, a spoon has a gender. So like every single object has a gender. And I think that's also if you look at the cultures that are struggling, actually, like with the concept of transness tends to be reflected in the language. So like, that's one of the things that I didn't even realize, that it's like, oh, my mom's literally not just misgender. It's just because her brain doesn't think in pronouns. Like, there is an absence of gender from the get-go. So that's interesting that I'm sure it's that way with a lot of other Asian cultures.
And I think that's kind of beautiful that there is that absence of gender in Asian cultures. You almost have that freedom to not think about it a bit more.
Yeah, there's language is it's so important. And I think the most important thing is whether you understand why or why not someone else wants to be called what they're called or whatever pronouns they want to use, is just to respect it. Because even if you don't understand it, they're telling you. And it's funny because people think this is such a foreign concept, but like the name Jack in the US is a nickname for the name John, which is insane to me. Like, how the fuck does like Jack Kennedy, his name, John F. Kennedy, and we're fine with that. People see all the time people's, birth name, and it's like, actually, I go by my middle name, and teachers are fine with that. It's for some reason the gender of it all confuses people, but like people are just saying what they want to be called and what their needs are. And like, I'm sure there are plenty of cis people who do not like what their parents name them and go by something else when they get older.
Yeah, there was someone I knew from high school who changed their name 4 times and legally, and it took a long time. Yeah, because they're like, no, I don't like that name. And I think sometimes someone brought it up that with people who are trans, and why people don't like pronouns and names is because they feel like they're playing with the patriarchal powers. You're losing your cis male privilege, or you're gaining male privilege. And so some people don't like that. And so it's kind of like an internalized transphobia of them not realizing that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Who knows if that's the case, but you could definitely see the links there somehow.
Oh, totally. My current going theory on all of this is that I think people are afraid of something they don't understand or of something they want. And I'm not saying at all that cis people want to be trans, but I think that a lot of cis people can see that there is a freedom in trans people once we get to the point of really accepting ourselves, that cis people aren't allowed because they feel like they have to be a certain type of man or a certain type of woman. And it's kind of the thing, like when you're a kid, of like, well, that's not fair. Why do they get to eat ice cream and I don't? So no one should get to eat ice cream. It's like, no, you should have ice cream too. Like, that's kind of the That's, I think, as how simple it is. And, the more maybe academic way is like you either accept yourself or you have to annihilate the part of yourself that you don't accept. So I think the people who have the strongest reactions they're struggling with some part of their gender identity. And again, not meaning that they're trans, but just meaning that some part of what they've been told about what it means to be a man or a woman doesn't align with them. And it doesn't seem fair. And to them, I say, just come over to our side and like do whatever you want in terms of gender. Like you do whatever you want. Who cares?
Yeah, there's cake and ice cream on this side, so come on over.
Yeah, yes. And most of it is like lactose free because a lot of queer people are lactose free.
Yeah, I'm lactose intolerant.
Me too.
It's the struggle. It's for sure the struggle. But so you've got another season. So the third season, as we're wrapping up, what's that going to be about?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, we have been greenlit for a third season, which I guess is kind of breaking news here on Let's Be Perfectly Queer. We have been greenlit for a third season, and right now we're kind of trying to conceptualize what it is. I think I'm very drawn to the idea of re-exploring my femininity and the things about my femininity that I might have rejected, or revisiting things that I learned in femininity that didn't feel quite right, that I'm curious about now that I am in the right body. Can I embrace those sides of myself? So one of them would be, I did this video at Buzzfeed where I learned to dance in 30 days. That was a lot about like learning to be sexy. And because I never felt sexy, I mean, I just never felt like I had a body. Honestly, when I was a woman, I was like, I'm just a personality. And so I wanted to learn to embody myself. And now I am kind of trying to figure out like, what does it mean to be embodied as a man and also to feel sexy to myself, whatever that means. And I really want to do drag as both a drag king and a drag queen. Like, I hated like wearing heels and dresses and all that stuff. It honestly felt like I was bad at doing drag for most of my life. And now the idea of getting to perform gender and take all the years of experience of my understanding of what gender and being socialized as a woman is, to see how well I can perform that for entertainment is like really exciting to me. So yeah, there's a lot I think that I want to explore. And also just things like that are kind of adjacent to that in terms of like, I think it's interesting, like I have to relearn my vocal register. Like I used to know which songs I could sing to in the car, and now I have no fucking clue. And like my whole Taylor Swift canon is off, and it's like, oh yeah, those are things that it's like, I don't know, I just want to reclaim that stuff. And a lot of that had to do with my femininity, like Taylor Swift was so much an encapsulation of like what it felt like to be a girl who didn't feel like she fit in.
Yeah, I love that. And it sounds like it's going to be such a great season. There's so many ideas that I'm sure a lot of trans people or even people who are questioning their gender would feel watching that would be such an experience. And to see you doing both the different drag kings and drag queens would be so much fun. I understand I could never wear heels. I was never a heels person. And it always felt like you're wearing a costume. That's what it felt like to me.
Yes.
And so it'd be interesting because you are going to be wearing a costume, but it's going to be a performative costume.
Exactly.
And will that feel more comfortable is going to be so interesting. And
is it an advantage all this time that I spent essentially undercover as a woman?
Yeah.
Of like, I'm very, very fascinated by the idea of what drag, that's been part of the discussion of drag recently is, can cis men or cis women do drag, or even straight men or straight women? And it's like, yes, because it's all performance of gender. So a straight cis woman can perform femininity because it's a performance. It might be very far from where she lands naturally on the spectrum. But I think that's just like the exact kind of thing that this show specifically allows us to tackle and I hope to do it with more trans people. I hope to bring more trans guys and perhaps trans women on board, or non-binary people, to also see their perspective. I honestly, a lot of people have asked, and I'm like, oh, I also want them to have their own show though, because it's like everybody deserves to have their own perspective explored and seen.
Yeah, and I did like that in the second season that you had trans men and giving their opinion as well. So it was kind of like, this is how I feel and this is how others feel. And it's okay that we don't all feel the same, but we can connect and also bond over those lived experiences as well. So it definitely sounds like this third season is going to be really fun. And I can't wait to see how you present in this third season and
Yeah.
what's going to happen. So it's been really awesome watching your journey. Thank you so much for jumping on and getting in touch. And also thank you for letting everybody know that there is going to be a third season.
Woo!
And you heard it here first.
Yeah, breaking news.
Which is super exciting. Congratulations on that. Well done. But is there anything you'd like to tell our listeners before we head off today?
I love you guys. Keep being yourself. And if you want to listen to more of me in a podcast form, you can listen to my podcast on the phone with Ash and Amanda. It's me and my friend just shooting the shit. And be on the lookout for more New Guy Tries, which is available on YouTube or Second Try. But thank you so much, Archie, for having me. And thank you for, again, it's so rare that like I get to have this conversation with another trans man instead of trying to like explain this to a cis person, a very well-meaning cis person. So I appreciate also getting to share this space with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's like you don't have to over-explain.
No.
If that makes sense, you can just, this is how it is. Oh yeah, I totally understand. I get it. But thank you so much. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Find Ash and their awesome podcast. I'll put links in the show notes, and I'll put links to all of the New Guys Tries and all of the Second Try links there as well. So yeah, thank you for getting all the way through. Ash, you've been an amazing guest. I've had a lot of fun chatting, and it feels like even though we're on the opposite side of the world, we could connect on a lot of different things. It doesn't matter whereabouts you come from in the world. We all can share experiences together, and I hope that we have been
perfectly queer.
Let's be perfectly queer.
Woohoo! Bye, everyone.